What's up, guys? We are back with a Masters of the Universe Origins review, taking a look at the latest wave of figures. So we're taking a look at 4 different figures today, and I just sort of happened upon these at Target, and I had a nice in-store find for a change, which was really exhilarating. So we're taking a look today at Tri-KLOPS, NINJOR, we've got Stratos, which is the one character that I truly never really cared about, but I'm happy that we finally got him. And we're taking a look at Hordak. So I'm really excited about this wave. It's 4 heavy hitter characters. Even though I'm not a big Stratos fan, he's a main component of our Heroic Masters, so he's much needed. And then all 3 of these bad guys are definitely up there for me. NINJOR in particular, Hordak for sure, and I mean, who doesn't need a Tri-KLOPS? So these guys, of course, come in our standard Origin style packaging, which is very vintage inspired. So you've got the lava burst, you've got the Masters logo figure there in the bubble, and then on the back you've got some fantastic new artwork at the top. You've got those vintage accessory and action feature style callouts, and then you've got your cross sell for this current wave along with He-Man and Skeletor. And Hordak even comes with the vintage style Evil Horde sticker on the bubble, so you can't go wrong there. So let's do it. Let's pull these guys out and take a look. So we're going to run through these guys individually, and we're going to start with NINJOR because, well, why not? And I'm not going to do articulation, at least in depth, for every single figure, unless there's something really different that needs to be mentioned, because again, they are basically all the same. So as far as moving them around, head goes up a little bit. You've got down, we've got tilt side to side and full rotation. The arms go out at the shoulders. They do rotate, but they only go so far on this line because the arms are sunken down into the shoulders, so they can swivel back and forth basically, but they mostly just go forward. You've got a single rotating elbow, basically 90 degrees, and you've got hinges and rotation at the wrist. They've got their waist twist. Legs go out, and then they kick forward. You can get them to go a little bit further if you kind of twist, but that's about as far as they're going to go. Kick backwards. There is no thigh twist or anything like that on here, but you can sort of shimmy them. You've got a rotation and hinge at the knee, however. You've got a boot cut, and then you've got rocker, and you've got hinges down at those ankles. So, you know, I mean, if you've messed with one of these, you really have messed with them all. Some are a little bit different than others, just because of their overall construction, and then, you know, certain sculpting little bits that will get in the way here and there. But otherwise, they're all very par for the course. They're all very, very similar figures. And I'm really happy with the way these guys move for this particular line and, well, this price point. Aesthetically, NINJOR is similar, but also kind of different from his vintage counterpart, because the vintage counterpart had soft goods. So it had a soft goods face mask, and it had a soft goods tunic. NINJOR here just has the overlay piece for his tunic, which I'm perfectly fine with. I'm okay with there not being soft goods in this instance. And then for the head, he just has the face mask, so you don't get to see, you know, his beard, mustache, any of that kind of stuff. You only get to see the eyes and just a little bit of skin peeking through, so you don't get to see any of that facial hair or anything like that. It's still very obviously NINJOR. I mean, the red demon feet, the kind of weird dragon emblem with the sword going through it on the chest, which is honestly tampoed and painted really nicely. It's a very obvious NINJOR figure, but at the same time, it's very much its own thing because we don't have soft goods and we don't get the options when it comes to the head sculpt. I don't mind that here particularly. It's not really a big deal for me. I like this head sculpt. It looks good. It's very evil looking, honestly. He is not a happy camper. And then the tunic and the face mask, the actual what would have been soft goods here, is very textured. It's not just flat plastic, so it does have kind of a weave patterning to it, so you can feel it. It's got a little bit of a tactile response, I suppose. And then he does have a little bit of paint, the belt, and then you've got the forearms painted as well. But the overwhelming majority of this figure is just cast black plastic, which I guess ultimately isn't too big of a deal when it comes to being a ninja figure. And then he does have some weapon storage, so you've got a slot for the sword and a spot for what I'm assuming is the spot for the nunchucks here, which we might as well go ahead and talk about. So we've got 3 weapons, 3 accessories with NINJOR. So you've got the katana, no paint on any of this stuff, so it's just flat. Well, maybe not flat, but it's not exactly metallic silver. And you can pop this in the back here. You've got to kind of point it up so it goes in there, and it'll sit in that on his back. And then you've got the nunchucks, which actually have a working chain. It's not a metal chain, but it is a working set of plastic links, which I do really like. And you can pop this down in here. I'm assuming that's where that goes anyway. And then it'll sort of cinch on his back like that. And then we've got his crazy sort of tactical bow here, which I've always thought was kind of ridiculous for this particular figure and this character, because it always looked a little over-designed. And frankly, I never use it with Ninjor anyway. It's always a sword, but I'm glad we do have it. So you've got multiple options here. The sword, the nunchuck, the bow, basically everything you really need to make a very vintage-inspired Ninjor, minus the soft goods. Despite being a character that I've never been a big fan of, or not because I don't like him, it's just because he's low on the list for me, Stratos is a pretty solid figure. He looks exactly like he's supposed to. He does have all the requisite articulation that you would expect to find with this line, so there's really nothing missing here, nothing extra, no surprises. He's going to move just like everybody else, which is to say he moves really well. I think the overall design on this figure looks good. He's got the furry beast chest, so you've got the big hairy chest, you've got the furry beast arms, he's got the beast legs, and of course even has the boot cut down there despite not having boots, which I am still happy that they do that for this particular figure. He's got his deep red harness with the feather design that of course has the requisite jetpack for the flying ape man on his back. Sculpt is really good, no paint on it though. And then he does have his feathers, his wings on his arms. These are of course, I mean, in generally speaking, considered accessories. I tend to not, because they're integral to him as far as I'm concerned, but you can pop them on, pop them off. If you don't want to use them, you don't have to, but they're that sort of bright blue color that matches and helps sort of tie his overall look together. There is very, very little paint on this figure. He is overwhelmingly molded plastic. Really the only paint to speak of is going to be on the belt and then on the head, and I do think the head sculpt looks really good. It's got a lot of that sort of ape feature, but then the helmet looks really good, and then you've got those jet black lenses with that super bright blue mask, and it clashes and it looks really goofy, which is of course a very Stratos thing to look. I mean, come on, he looks ridiculous, but he's definitely going to make for a nice addition to the crew. So he moves really well. He looks exactly like you would expect a very vintage-inspired Stratos to look like, and he comes with, well, not a whole lot of stuff, but frankly, everything you would expect him to come with. Tri-KLOPS is basically the figure that I want him to be, honestly. This is one I've really been looking forward to. One of the heavier hitters when it comes to bad guys, so I'm definitely on board there. He is, again, par for the course when it comes to this line as far as articulation, so arms, head, waist, legs, feet, the whole deal, it's all the same kind of stuff. I do think that he looks really good from the outset. Overall sculpt is really nice. A lot of reuse here, obviously, because that's the general build for Tri-KLOPS. His armor, though, the sculpt on it is really nice. I'm really happy with the little accents on it. I do think the paint applications, at least on mine, leave a little bit to be desired. They're kind of thin almost, so you can sort of see some of the green peeking through there. And then not to mention there's a little bit of a smudge on it as well. I do really like the sculpt on it, though. It is removable, of course, just like all the other armor when it comes to this stuff. And he does have the slot for the sword, which we'll talk about here in just a sec. The big thing for this guy, though, is definitely the head sculpt, because, well, not only is it a very vintage-inspired head sculpt, it looks really good as far as that expression, it does work. And you've got the blue eye, you've got the red eye, and then you've got the actual, like, evil eye, which I really dig. So I'm really happy with the way this guy turned out. I think the overall approach to him is a very much modern interpretation of that vintage figure, and it looks great. Tri-KLOPS is a favorite of mine, so I'm happy to have this guy in this line. Again, my only real issue is some of the splotchiness when it comes to that paint. But otherwise, he looks fantastic. And he comes with the sword, which I love Tri-KLOPS sword. Something about it just is really cool to me. Again, not really anything to speak of when it comes to the paint department, but the overall sculpt is nice. And I mean, it's huge. It's big. It's almost as long as the entire figure is. So it's a very big, beefy weapon that he gets here. And of course, it works really well when it comes to color matching, because it goes along with his armor perfectly. So you've got the action feature, you've got the sword, and you've got the really cool armor piece that rounds out this figure incredibly well. He's definitely up there for probably one of my favorites in the entire line right now. Without a doubt, my most anticipated figure for this line, and honestly one I have been waiting for since the beginning of this line, is Hordak. I'm a big fan of the Evil Horde stuff. I love the She-Ra cartoons, so there's a lot about this particular figure that I really like. Granted, this of course is the vintage toy Hordak look, so he's not bright blue and with the super white face, but I still have a soft spot for this particular look for Hordak as well. And this again is another really good interpretation in this line of that vintage look. He is a little bit limited when it comes to articulation compared to other figures, and that's mostly just because of the head sculpt. He can look up a little bit, but he can't really look down, and obviously it's because he's got that crazy bone kind of cowl that sits around his head. He can still rotate, but it's kind of goofy looking as well, and he doesn't have as much tilt either. Otherwise, though, he is still very, very par for the course. I think, though, ultimately what it comes down to for me is just the overall look, the aesthetics, and they really well nailed this one. He has a little bit more paint than we're used to seeing on some other figures, mostly because he just has a lot more to his design. So he's got the Horde emblem on his chest that's painted, you've got the painted emblem on his arm, you've got the silver sort of metallic belt, he's got the emblems on his boots as well, he's got his cape, of course, which looks really good. It's just, you know, sort of rubbery plastic. It hangs well enough. It doesn't hit the floor or anything like that, so it doesn't impede his balance either. He stands just fine despite having that hanging off of him. I think colors are really bright and vibrant, and in so much as, you know, blacks and grays can be. Everything's really saturated is, I guess, the best way to say it. And I think he looks fantastic. I'm really happy with this version of Hordak, and I'm really looking forward to whatever other versions they're going to give us when it comes to that supposed deluxe Hordak that's out there. He does have some accessories, of course. So we've got an imp for this guy here, and this guy just wraps around his wrist. It's actually kind of difficult to peg this in, I will say that. So you sit it on his wrist and flip this sort of, sort of peg in around it, and it'll peg in through the top. I just had to poke it through with something else. I used a sword from another figure actually to poke it through, but of course you've got that very vintage inspired looking imp, which looks really good there. I think it's nice, and it very much ties the look together. He does have his white crossbow as well that you can pop on his wrist, and then you can, of course, squeeze it shut, and then you can, sort of trigger it to make it sort of fire. It doesn't actually shoot anything, but it's a very telltale Horde weapon, because everybody gets a crossbow when it comes to the Horde. It doesn't matter what you are or what your power set is, you're going to get a crossbow, because that is standard issue stuff. But yeah, I'm really, really happy with this guy. He is definitely worth the price of admission for sure, and I'm really hopeful that we're going to get a bunch of Horde goons to complement this guy. And then, without really giving it away, because I'm not going to go through all of this, we're going to briefly touch on the fact that these guys do all come with a mini comic. Of course, that is par for the course with this line, where everybody in the wave gets the same comic. So this one's Sneak Attack, and you can see it looks like Ninjor is going after the Avion folks there, and he's got the Staff of Avion as well. So I'm not going to go through it. I'm not going to give away plot points or anything like that, but you've got your comic with the cross-sell on the back, and it's a pretty good one too. I really did enjoy the read on this one, but you will have to figure out what happens for yourself. So yeah, this is a very, very solid wave. That's pretty much all I need to say. This is a solid wave from start to finish. I'm not a huge Stratos guy, but his figure is really good. It's exactly what it needs to be for this particular line. The villains, though, are truly where it's at for me. Ninjor is fantastic. He doesn't have everything that the vintage figure does because of the head situation, but I'm perfectly fine with this interpretation of him. And Tri-KLOPS and Hordak, I mean, that's huge right there to get in the same wave. Tri-KLOPS is a major player when it comes to the main bad guys. The head rotation works really well. Dig the sword. Colors are bright and vibrant. And then Hordak is Hordak. He's one of my favorite MOTU, Princess of Power, whatever you want to call him, characters. He's one of my favorite. He's one of my favorite bad guys when it comes to 80s stuff in general. And I'm really happy with this version of him. It very much evokes that vintage look and feel. And he moves really well. And he looks evil. And it's Hordak. So I was going to be there no matter what. So again, stacked wave. Excellent batch of figures. This is definitely going to be a wave to beat going forward. So that's going to do it for this look at the Masters of the Universe Origins Wave 4. Let me know what you guys think. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and share, and until next time.